Welcome to the fifth round of the Italian Youth Debate Championship. Today, our contestants will be on the proposition side, team Antonelli from Piemonte, and on the opposition side, we have the Debeatles from Campania. So I'll give the floor to the proposition team for their presentation.
Hello, I'm the first speaker of proposition and I will also do the reply later. And my name is Laura Corsi.
Hello, my name is Cecilia Battaglia and I'll be the second speaker of proposition team.
Hi, my name is Marina Floridi and I'll be the third speaker.
Super great. So now let's give the floor to the opposition team for their presentation.
Good evening. I'm Andrea Francesco Frangipani. I'll be doing the first and third speech for the opposition team.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Simone Salvarez. I'll be doing the second speech, and if it helps, also do the reply.
Okay, thank you. Now let's move on with the presentation of the panel. And so I'm Filippo and I will be the chair for this debate. And now I'll give the floor to my colleagues.
I'm Chiara and I'm a fellow judge.
I'm Irene Bianchi and I'm a fellow judge, and I wish to all of you a good debate.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to read the motion for this debate. Okay, which is, this House believes that a world where human immortality is achievable would be a net negative for the human condition. So without further ado, I give the floor to the first speaker of the proposition team. You're here.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Immortality. Solving death for the wealthy and social collapse for everybody else. What could go wrong? I would like to start by giving some definition. The first definition is immortality. Immortality is the ability to live forever. It's eternal life. This means that an individual can become immortal and all of a sudden nothing can make him die. He can get infinite diseases, get shot multiple times, but nothing will make him die. I would like to underline how this goes against the definition of a human being. So just the possibility of a single individual or a group of individuals having the possibility to live forever contradicts the meaning of human. So humans naturally structure life around milestones like childhood, career, relationship, aging, and death. If death is removed, these markers lose significance. The awareness of mortality gives life urgency and motivation. So what is the second key term of this debate? It's achievable. Panel, please take in account that this term is the key term of this debate. At Pro House, we believe that by achievable, it means that in an alternative society, immortality has been discovered as a genetic mutation that can be inserted in the human genome through operation. But it's not available to the whole society. Only a small part of the population can afford this expensive treatment, since it would cost millions. If only wealthy individuals can purchase immortality, they suddenly have an advantage over everybody else. Money translates into indefinite life, which means these people can hold wealth and resources forever, control industry, government, and military power across centuries, and pass down influence and power, not through merit, but purely because they never die. This creates a rigid, immortal elite class, making social mobility nearly impossible. So I would like to underline what problems this system would bring. The first is corruption intensifies. If the mortal elites can live forever, they can bribe and manipulate law enforcement without fear of repercussions. Law begins to bend in their favor, enduring trust in institutions. So, and then there is desperation brings violence. The non-wealthy population might resort to rebellion, terrorism, or extreme crime as a way to seize what seemed unattainable. And then psychological impacts. Knowing the rich can live forever could demoralize ordinary people. And stagnation of innovation. With the same immortal people holding power, ideas and leadership stagnate. New generations are suppressed and meritocracy collapses. And then immortality might protect the body, but could devastate the mind. The infinite extension of life risks loneliness, grief accumulation, meaningless, identity fragmentation, and moral detachment. So what is our timeline? The first is immortality will reshape society in the worst way. The second is loss of meaning and identity fixation. And the third is moral detachment. So what is the burden of this debate? The team that wins this debate is the one that can prove in which life the human have not only a better life, but also a fairer condition in society. So I would like to start by talking about our first point. Immortality will reshape society in the worst way. It would be amazing to live forever and be able to do whatever you want. But if immortality existed, that would be what would be the real outcome of society? As explained in the framework, immortality wouldn't be reached by everyone, but just from the few lucky rich people that could afford it. Our society relies on the old law, where the oldest have more power, since they have more wisdom. This would also be true if immortality existed, and it would be even worse. The few immortal people would start to command and manipulate society at their wish. And even if mortal being would be able to outsmart them, they would, no thank you, they would only have a lifetime to change what immortal people have centuries to build. It's not only the oldest who have more power, but also the richest. As I explained before, rich people would become immortal and would start to get more rich with time, exploiting the innocent life of mortal beings. Mortal people would be born in a world where the immortal chooses everything. As they build a system through the years, they would have no way to escape, nor probably even recognize that they're being used, as that would just be the normality. While immortals would be used to see immortal die, they would not be scared to replace and use them. Think about it. For us, cows are merely animals with a briefer life than us, so we kill them without caring for their life. Immortals would do the same with mortals. In politics, immortal beings would be considered wiser and therefore take the power initially, and that power would never lose their hands because things will never change. They will also always have more knowledge than everybody else. Same things goes for the industries. Someone that has done something for decades definitely knows better how it works. Yes, thank you.
Are you aware of the fact that while this could be an expensive modification at the start, as is with modern medicine, this could be developed through research into being cheaper to be affordable by everyone?
Even if that was the case, don't you understand that a society where everybody is immortal within what will like bring to a society that does not work? Like even right now in our world, there is overpopulation. If everybody is immortal, nobody dies, and people start to reproduce because that's what humans do. Humans feel love. Humans feel the need to have children. So even if it would be cheaper and everybody could afford it, this will just bring to more problems because not only a small part of society would be immortal for a longer time, because as you said, it would inevitably become cheaper, but there are people who had the money before who were immortal for a longer time, but it would also lead to like the collapse of society itself, because our world can take that many people. So I would like to restart to talk about my point. You can become immortal with an operation made by a doctor, or you can either pay millions of dollars, or you can threaten and obligate the doctor to perform that operation illegally. Naturally, some people would try to hack or steal immortal technology, creating criminal underworlds dedicated to breaking the system. If those people are able to achieve immortality, this would create a society that is controlled by rich people who can be deposed and criminals who have all the time in the world to develop new techniques to create more damage to society and would just be unstoppable. Even if they got arrested, they would definitely find a way out throughout eternity. So in a world where repercussion becomes inefficient, the human egoistic nature will be unstoppable. If immortals are in power, they will start war over the smallest thing, as they wouldn't find the necessity to repress their feelings, because after all, war would just be a game since they could never die. So if you think they would care about mortal beings, then you're wrong. They would just become replaceable pawns in their hands. So what are the impacts? Immortality becomes the ultimate status symbol. With immortality, only the rich underground markets and black market skins would explode, and the immortal elites could also experience detachment from the wider society, deepening social polarization and potentially resulting in oppressive governance, elitist culture, and moral decay. That's the end of my speech. Thank you.
Thank you. The time of the speech was 8 minutes. Okay, great. So I thank the first speaker of the proposition team for their speech. And now we leave the floor to the first speaker of the opposition team.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone. I'm the first speaker for the opposition team, here to discuss the motion stated beforehand. This house believes that a world where human immortality is achievable will be a net negative for the human condition. Now let's start by defining immortality. Immortality, by definition, is the ability for humans to live indefinitely without dying from disease, aging, or natural causes. But for immortality to be implemented as an optional medical treatment, we assume that this would consist in this optional process that slows aging exponentially and prevents disease chemically that can be stopped at any time. But this does not make you effectively immortal forever against your will. This will always be an optional treatment. So we do not assume that humanity becomes immortal at all at the same time. Now, why is this a problem? Why are we opposing this the implementation of this medical treatment? Because first of all, I'm sorry. Why are we not opposing the implementation of this medical treatment? Is because we think that immortality would be just a really good thing for humanity overall, mostly because of the fact that the biggest limitation for human potential and self-actualization of every single human being is mortality, because human death arbitrarily ends knowledge, relationship, and achievements. So removing that completely allows individuals to develop skills, wisdom, and contributions to society indefinitely. So someone who simply wants to become a better version of themselves and achieve their goals has infinite time to do so. So this would simply just this is the reason I refuse. Sorry. So that's why we think it would be a great thing for the individual. But other than that, it would be such a great thing for society as a whole, since the sanitary system, so all the healthcare system and everything behind it uses copious amounts of capital to sustain itself. So with humans being immortal, without getting diseases, without aging, without the complications that come with aging, all the capital from the state that could be used for that is being used in the status quo to fund the sanitary system could be used for something else, for more important stuff, for stuff that would be more important, since people do not have to worry about aging anymore. Now, let's go on to the stakeholders. As I said before, the individual, the humanity in general, is going to be affected by this, by the introduction of this medical treatment to the medical system, and the other stakeholders, which also is a part of humanity, is our institutions, because scientific institutions will really benefit from this, because experts, scientists, and leaders can accumulate centuries of experience improving governance and innovation with the same researchers and scientists working for their infinite lifetime. And so we can go on and just create more of these long-term projects, such as space exploration, climate solutions that become more feasible when you know that, first of all, you have a much bigger and better workforce, and the people working at this project projects that are useful for the advancement of humanity are going to basically live forever. So that's a really good thing for the scientific field mainly. Now I'm gonna go on to the main argumentation of the speech. I, as a speaker, assert that a world with immortality allows individuals to pursue deeper fulfillment, more knowledge, and richer life experiences than just a limited lifespan allows. So, as I said before, this really benefits the individual being. So, as I said, the human death adds knowledge, relationship, and every single kind of thing you build in your lifetime. So, by removing death, you can just develop your skills until you want to, until you just are tired to do so, too tired to do so. So you can contribute to society in an indefinite way without the needing to, restart every generation. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because people often spend decades in education. They spend 20 years in school. They spend decades working. So they do not really have time to pursue their passions, to dedicate more time to exploration, to mastery of their favorite skills. They do not have the time to master multiple disciplines. They do not have the time to pursue long, passion, creative projects. They do not have time to travel, research, and innovate over centuries. So we can say that being immortal will make everyday life, will make the human lifetime much, much, much less miserable than it is. Since, as a human, as I just said, your life is compromised basically to working, going to school for education, and so you don't know. I accept.
But don't you think that even maybe people would like that for 2 centuries and then they would get bored of the things they're doing and wouldn't know what to do anymore because they have so much time left?
So first of all, we thought about this thing about boredom, because that would be a real problem. But the fact is that first of all, it would be really, really hard to run out of things to do in the world. You can basically do everything, but we do not assume that by becoming immortal, you cannot decide anymore to just put an end to your life. We assume that you would have somehow a way to just end your life when you want, to just get your life ended. Okay, because if not, then nobody would choose to become immortal. There would be a curse for eternity. There would be just you would have just have downsides, no good things about it. Now, we have evidence of the fact that humans are more satisfied with their life when they live longer, because in the last few years, we're talking about the last decades, when the human life expectancy increased, people have been dedicating their life to getting more education and pursuing their passions more. People have been more happy the last 2 centuries, and people are more happy in the first world countries where the life expectancy is higher. So I'm going to wrap up all my speech by saying that if individuals can live longer and pursue more experience, knowledge, and achievements, the overall quality of human life increases. So immortality would be overall a good thing for all humanity. My speech is over.
Thank you. The time for your speech was 8 minutes and 15 seconds. Okay, so I thank the first speaker of the opposition team for their speech, and now I leave the floor to the second speaker of the proposition team. Here.
Okay, so My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Okay. So, opposition is trying to push a narrative that says that in our life we can have relationships, make experiences, or gain knowledge at all because we don't have enough time. But isn't something like that what we have in all our lives? Isn't it the status quo not being immortal? So being able to have friends makes us have relationships. Having gaining experiences through whatever we do, trips and whatever, is something we can do still in the status quo. And also gaining knowledge, it's something we can all do in the status quo, probably something we are doing currently in our everyday life. So why being immortal is the thing that makes this possible when it is already possible in the status quo? So this is the start of my rebuttal of the first speech of the opposition team, and then I will go on with my points. Then I would like to rebut something else. While when the first speaker of opposition started, he said that immortality wouldn't be something that everyone would have at once. So he's kind of agreeing with our model of just some people getting to have that. But then it kind of contradicts the POI that the other speaker of opposition said, that was about what would happen, the fact that this immortality could be achieved by everyone at the same time. Then he kind of brought in the framework that immortality is rather having a longer life, not an actual immortal life that negates the proposition. So we are not taking that into consideration. And then the main argument for saying that immortality is good was that we have endless time, we would have endless time, and by that we could be able to gain more knowledge, have more relationships, and have greater achievements. And as I debated before, as I rebutted before, that could be done even by someone mortal. So that wouldn't be exclusive to being immortal. And then also about this, we can make an example. Let's think, for example, about the Greek gods. Okay, they might have had more knowledge than humans, but relationship-wise, okay, they could have had great relationships, but about that, they would be the only pro to having an immortal life about relationship would be if you had a relationship with someone else that's also immortal as you. But taking the Greek gods, they would be all about cheating because they were getting bored. Because about having an immortal life, you would have the same experience over and over again so much time that you get bored. This is one of the problems. And then the first speaker also brought that the resources that are currently used for old people could be used by, to get to other things like more knowledge or scientific discovery. Because these resources would be used for something else. But wouldn't be at least the same resources to get to immortality would be equal to the resources that would be free, let's say, because people don't get ill or old first. And then the second thing is, what would drive people to get to more knowledge where they have all the time in the world? So this brings us to our second argument, that is the loss of meaning and identity fixation. So the possibility of immortality harms the individual because human meaning is structured around the awareness that life is finite. When immortality becomes achievable only for the wealthy, it creates both existential emptiness and permanent power concentration. So mortality gives life meaning because human life is shaped by the fact that time is limited. Because people know they are going to die eventually, they are pushed to prioritize what matters, pursue meaningful goals, build relationship, and make decisions and take risks. So mortality creates urgency and structure and people cannot postpone everything forever. However, when immortality becomes possible, these structures disappear. If someone can live indefinitely, almost every goal becomes indefinitely postponable. Instead of thinking, I should do this now because my life is limited, people will think, I can always do it later. This leads to existential procrastination. Then experiences also lose emotional weight, even because the time limit is what gives value to those experiences and those emotions. Then immortality will become an elite privilege because, as we stated, as my first speaker brought, only the rich ones will have it. So it's not universally accessible because technology is extremely expensive. Only wealthy individual can afford it. This means immortality does not only extend life, but it permanently separates society into two classes: a small group of immortal elites and a large part of the population that continues to live and die normally. So this individual would have all the power and can get also not only the monetary and economical power, but also the political power, and will maintain it because they won't die. And then what are the impacts of this argument? Individually, the loss of urgency and motivation, existential boredom and meaning in delusion, and difficulty defining identity across endless life. And then societal, through the individual, the permanent elite domination, extreme wealth and accumulation over centuries. And also about the society, those people that would have all the power because they would be immortal. The immortal would see the mortal part of the population as something they could use, as something replaceable, only something short term that isn't really that connected to their lives, as for the cow example brought in the framework. So this would bring to reduced accountability because they would not care at all about exploiting the mortals, and this would lead to collapse of empathy between immortals and mortals, and probably the lack even of a relationship through the mortals and immortals apart from the work one, basically. And about society, the immortals would have all the power, abuse the immortals, and more hierarchy where mortal lives are valued less. And then a powerful example is from Gulliver Travel. The author describes a society where people can live forever and those people don't have the drive to do anything. Thank you. This would be the end of my speech.
Thank you. The time of your speech was 8 minutes and 6 seconds. Okay, so I thank the second speaker of the proposition team for the speech, and now we leave the floor to the second speaker of the opposition team.
Okay. So, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. The proposition team has deliberately taken us at our lowest possible ground because they couldn't engage with our highest ground even if they hardly desired to. 2 things from my speech. Firstly, a general part on refutation on what they have said on both their first speeches. And secondly, an argumentative portion where I will expose the remaining 2 arguments that remain in an argumentative line. First of all, many points of refutation. Firstly, the definition they gave is on immortality itself, is on how it goes against the definition of human life and it gives urgency to life. And just because something has historically defined human life, it doesn't mean that it must remain that way. Many things that have been considered part of human nature have changed. The average lifespan has doubled. Medicine prevents death of billions. Technology radically changed how humans behave on a day-to-day life. And the immortality would just be another step in the historical expansion of human capability. Another point that they made in our second speech is on how they extremized our claims on how you wouldn't be able to gain experience without immortality, something that we've presumably said in our speeches. Again, we didn't say that. You most definitely would be able to gain experience without immortality, but we win the comparative, right? If you have unlimited time to gain experience versus limited time, we can definitely identify who wins this. Secondly, they stated that law bends in the favor of the rich because they live forever, and immortals would be valued more, like mortals would be valued less than the immortal people. This happens in the status quo. It's not exclusive to immortal exponents. Economic inequality and elite influence has always been, has always existed and exists today despite limited lifespans. Rich individuals and families already maintain powers across generations through inheritance, corporate structures, and institutions. It doesn't introduce a new problem. It changes this form of time frame, but the mechanisms of regulation, whether it be taxation, antitrust laws, democratic governance, already exist to limit this excessive concentration of power. If societies can regulate wealth today, that means they can do it in an immortal society as well. Another point that they stated is on how immortality will reshape society in the worst way, stating on how only the rich will be the only ones capable to afford. But we state this by saying that nearly every single major medical advancement, such as vaccines, antibiotic surgeries, HIV treatment even, initially benefited those who could afford it. Generally the wealthy or developed countries, but eventually became publicly funded, mass-produced, and globally distributed. If immortality exists, governments and societies would have enormous incentives to subsidize and universalize it, just as they do with life-saving medicine today, because they have the economic incentive to do so. Another entire argument that they made on the loss of meaning of life, I'm sorry, I refuse, is that the life would lose meaning because people are immortal and thus experiences would be valued less. But even then, on the fact that life is temporary, which gives meaning to the things that you do, meaning doesn't come from death or life being limited, but from experiences and goals you achieve in life. It comes from relationships, achievements, curiosity, experiences, not the fact that life ends. Immortality gives individuals more time to pursue more meaningful experiences, and taking that away, and the application of this shows how the application of immortality isn't a net negative. Propp's arguments that fundamentally depends on worst-case speculation because they rely on a speculative dystopian scenario rather than a genuine and realistic social outcome. They assume that immortality stays forever, that institutions collapse, and that elites gain permanent control. But to combat this, we just need to state why the benefits of immortality, which we will in the rest of my speech. They also they stated that genetic replication would be the same as multi-trillion-dollar spending. So the money that we save by making people immortal would just be used. The money that we use to make people immortal would just be taken from the money that we've saved by not pursuing the sanitary system. If it's a genetic mutation, genes can be multiplied in labs for basically free. Once discovered, they are able to be replicated. It's not this big economic spending. It's the replication of a gene. This ends the refutation part of my speech, and I hope I've convinced you to vote for the opposition team. This leads into the argumentative part, because if immortality eliminates aging and disease, governments are able to free up enormous amounts of public money currently tied up in healthcare and redirect those resources towards sectors that directly improve human flourishing. Because modern sanitary systems are built around biological fragility, and a large part of state spending isn't about improving people beyond a set mark. It's about fighting decline. People are sick. People need to be treated with their chronic illnesses. They need to prolong elderly life, palliative care, emergency interventions, and things of the sort. The healthcare system absorbs huge amounts of capital because the human body constantly breaks down. And if immortality is achievable, in the way that this motion imagined, and in the way that we have stated multiple times, where there is an option to quit life, then the largest drivers of healthcare spending either disappear or shrink dramatically, making it so that this spending can be used on other things. If disease and physical deterioration are eliminated or minimized, states don't need to maintain such a massive apparatus for medical care. That means that the state is not forced to spend a huge part of its budget on these things. Once this spending pressure is removed, these resources become politically and economically available for reallocation. And it's not like it's a hard process at that. Most of the money in this scheme is government managed, so it's easy to move around. It's not wealth that's lost, it's wealth that can be deliberately shifted. States can invest it into education, housing, environmental adaptation, which we heavily need in the status quo, and it creates a compounding effect, which changes the entire orientation of society. Instead of pouring public money into decaying health and managing suffering, states can spend more on enabling human development, because right now, healthcare systems spend enormous sums on age-related and chronic illnesses. it's just expensive end-of-life treatment. And in a world where immortality removes these burdens, government could invest this capital into other things. Therefore, how can immortality be a net negative if it's not only beneficial because individuals live longer, it's beneficial because it frees society from one of its biggest structural financial burdens, which is the sanitary system. Secondly, on long-term thinking, because when we're immortal, long-term thinking becomes rational. Because if the main reason why long-term thinking isn't mainstream or used frequently is because people won't live to see the consequences. This is why climate change isn't talked about often in politics. Because the people currently alive or the politician currently in term won't be able to see the consequences. He'll just see the temperature spike by a few degrees or so and then leave the question because he's either going to be dead or out of the political system. We have in the current society a structural incentive for short-term thinking because politicians prioritize policies that produce benefits within their election cycles. Corporations make investments only on short-term benefits because they don't want to risk on the long term. Immortality changes this incentive structure because everyone who is immortal, which will be the majority of the population, as medical advances will be carried out to the majority of the population, will be directly affected by the consequences of their actions. And when individuals are directly exposed to their long-term consequences, it becomes rational to plan for the future and no longer just a distant thing that's far from the people and can just be left at that. This changes the way that institutions behave because governments, businesses, and societies would be incentivized to invest in politics that takes decades or centuries to pay off simply because they will live to see the fruits of their change. Therefore, immortality aligns humans' incentives with long-term well-being, encouraging individuals and institutions to prioritize sustainability, stability, and long-term progress, which is exactly why we urge you to vote for the opposition team. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. The time of your speech was 8 minutes and 10 seconds.
When everyone is ready.
Yes, okay, just let me thank the second, no worries, the second speaker of the opposition team and leave the floor to the third speaker of the proposition team, whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Surely it would be amazing if humans were so nice, but unfortunately they are. We are egoistic beings, and that's the whole point. So why do you think that immortality will go to everyone? If people were so nice, if governments, if rich people were so nice to expand the research, then why there are people who are still living with no water, no running water, no money, nothing? Because that's just an advantage for governments. As the third speaker of proposition team, what can you expect from this debate? I will go through the 3 main clashes that I found on this debate. First of all, would government prevent people from gaining immortality, or would they help people having it? Second of all, do immortal being help societies through scientific innovation, or they will be selfish with it? And third of all, does it immortality help human emotions and morality, or does it deteriorate it? So going through the first questions, would government prevent or help immortality? All of opposition team line bases on the fact that humans will be so nice and not egoistic and all, and that immortality will reach everyone just because a few health I'm not accepting just because a few health diseases are like a few medical situations were solved doesn't mean that immortality will go through everyone, because if that was the case, then it would just be irrational for rich people to give immortality to everyone. It wouldn't help them at all. Rich people gives help to other people. Rich people gives help to everyone when that help actually just benefits them. Immortality does not benefit them. Giving immortality to everyone does not benefit them. So government wouldn't give immortality to them, because why would they? Why would they create a society that lives forever, that just isn't as good as just having them being immortality and having the war for them? And even if everyone was immortal, that wouldn't change the status quo. They literally said that. So why would it be good? It would just mean that people would live, rather than live 50, 100 years working. I'll take your point in 20 seconds. Rather than working or living like a bad life for 20, 50, 80 years, they would live it for an eternity, for 500 years. If people would work, they would just be locked into that work and into that same job forever. And that is far worse than living 100 years with a job that you don't like and a life that you don't want to live. Yeah, I'll take your point now.
If by definition humans are egotistical people and we live in an egotistical society, why are indigenous countries, for example, getting HIV cures, or why are we giving out this medical equipment to people for free?
Thank you for your question, because that doesn't change the status quo. That still benefits them. Also, I will also tell you something. If we cure those people are workforce. Workforce can help us, and that can help our society. And also, we are egoistic. That doesn't mean that we are only that. We can surely help someone, but not if that helping doesn't benefit us. We only do things that benefit us or doesn't harm us. Giving immortality to everyone would harm us. But even taking that we would give immortality to everyone, people who are poor now would still not benefit, because they wouldn't be able to change their life. You said that they would be able to pursue their passions and live 100 and like just do many things. But how would they do that? They would have no money to do that, because the system would just stay the same with immortality. So rich people would always remain the same rich people, and poor people would just have to follow what they do for eternity. Changing would be far more difficult, because an entire thing would just literally be like, for example, the industry would just be like that and wouldn't change. Which brings to my second point: does immortality help? Does immortal beings help society through scientific innovation, or it will be selfish? Okay, I have two matters on this. First of all, if people are always the same, then the scientific words is always blocked to the same people. So even if someone wanted to pursue the scientific passion, they wouldn't have the time to do that. They wouldn't have all the parts were like all the jobs would be already taken. And also, you said that they would create some great thing, but unfortunately, we may be immortal, but our world surely isn't. And we know what scientific progress does. We create more nuclear bombs, we create more armies, because that's what scientific progress is leading us. So by being immortal, we would just create nuclear bombs that would just make our world collapse. We may survive, but if our worlds didn't, then in what world will we live? That's why scientific progress wouldn't be good at all. And also, the same minds get fixed. If you just look at an old person, they had the same beliefs that they were born with, and after some time, they just can't change them anymore. This would be the same in immortality. After some time, the same person couldn't go through a scientific innovation. If that was the case, then we would have discovered electricity 1,000 years ago and not just 100, because people need changing. People need time to adjust, and just it is impossible. It is impossible to do that. Like if you need a lifetime to do that, your mind is still that. Your mind is limited to what you can do. You couldn't think. If you think about it, you don't think that you could fly right now, like just out of nowhere, because that's not in your mind. But maybe in 1,000 years, there will be a person with all their scientific progress that will think, oh, maybe I can fly. But that's because they will have another mentality. We wouldn't be able to change mentality. And my last clash: does immortality helps the human emotion and morality, or does it deteriorate it? You said that it would help the human emotion to create relationship and everything, but we have in our world so many examples about the fact that living more just makes you more distant with your emotion. Just think about old people. Old people don't feel the same as teenager, for example, because they learn to distance themselves. There are so many literature books that literally looked into the life of immortal beings and how would that be, and that would just create a lonelier life. And even if that didn't create a lonelier life, then it would just create a world where just an argument would create a war, and an argument would be brought into centuries and just create even a far more damaging war institutions. Like if I'm arguing with someone, then that like arguing would be just brought into eternity, because I wouldn't find the need to resolve it, because oh my god, I have limited time, I need to resolve it. And so like summing up, they also didn't even question our points, which were like if it was limited, they just talked about the fact that it wouldn't be limited. But if it was limited, this would be brain damage. Let's think about it. No one's won a war if with immortality, because after like no one's wants to be stuck into the same position forever, and that's great or not would be what would happen. So that's like, if we really sum it up, immortality isn't great because scientific progress would just destroy our world, because living forever would just lead to lonelier life, and because institution will guide everything, and people would just have to follow those institutions and wouldn't be free to actually live and actually try and change the facts. We also said at the start that mortals wouldn't be able to change what immortals do. And that's the end of my speech.
Great. The time of your speech was 8 minutes and 8 seconds. Okay, so I thank the first speaker of the proposition team for their speech, and now we leave the floor to the third speaker of the opposition team.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone. I'm the third speaker of the opposition team, and now we're going to talk about, my speech is going to be composed of a first part of a rebuttal of the overall argument of the proposition team, and a second part of rebuilding our arguments. So I'm going to start by rebuting some of their assertions, such as the one of they talk to our second speaker, POI, in the first proposition speech about overpopulation, but overpopulation would simply not be that big of a problem with immortality. Well, it would be a problem, but we humans have already adopted ways to contrast, to battle the problem of overpopulation, such as reproductive policies, would be very controversial. But in such an extreme time where most human beings are immortal, people will not really bat an eye about that. Then we have family planning. There are going to be a lot of cultural shifts in fertility. People are going to just start making less and less children. And we know that because today, already in many developed societies, in many first world countries, birth rates are already declining, except...
Sorry, but didn't you say in this society with immortal people we would have more money? And isn't the people with more money the ones that bring more children into life, taking the fact that they have more money to spend on them?
First of all, I don't get why that has something to do with what I'm saying right now, but the fact is that it's not certain that only the rich people will bring more children to life. In the status quo, that simply doesn't happen. As I just said, in the first world countries where people are richer, the birth rates are just declining. So we could see that trend simply persisting in almost everyone is immortal hypothetical society. So our population would just be a necessary consequence. So I'm not saying it would not be a problem, but it can simply be battled. Now, let's move over to stagnation. Why stagnation would not be a problem? Because the proposition team simply assumed that people with will just gonna stop making innovations, especially political figures, because they're not gonna die. So there's not gonna be a renewal of the figures. But that just is not true, because people change. People just change in today's world, and there are elections, there are term limits, there are retirement norms, and there are competition in markets and academia. So this is not going to be a problem neither in the political aspect, since we have elections and term limits and stuff like that. And that's not going to be a problem in markets and academia, except.
Sorry, but if you're living a comfortable life, then why would you want to change it?
Sorry, can you repeat?
If you want to live a comfortable life, then why would you feel the need to change it? Like people in the government.
Because people need innovation. Because people constantly need innovation. Immortality does not guarantee a comfortable life. We never said that be an immortal world equals a nice world to live in. We just have this new power of immortality that we can use to make a better world, but that does not. But the making of a much comfortable world to live in is in the hands of our politicians. So immortality might actually reduce short-term thinking. Okay, people are going to just start thinking long-term, just as my teammate said before. People are just going to start thinking in the long-term. So politicians who are now not caring about stuff because they're going to die anyways in a few years are just going to start thinking about stuff for the long term. Then we move over to the loss of meaning stuff we talk about. But meaning does not come from death, because you guys said that not dying basically deprives the human being of any kind of meaning, since it does not feel an urgency to life. And first of all, why someone would have to feel urgency for life? Okay, but the fact is that simply meaning comes from experiences, goals, not from death. Okay, the human finds meaning in relationships, personal growth, learning and discovery, achieving goals, and contributing to society overall, not because of the fear of imminent death. So everyone just says, I'm going to die, so better make the most of it. That's not a healthy way to think about life. And real-world evidence actually supports my claim, since even if people are not close to their death, they still remain active in their communities, they continue learning and creating, they pursue new hobbies and careers or intellectual projects. So the whole loss of meaning arguments fails because meaning does not come from fear, okay? Immortality will simply multiply the ways human can find meaning to it. And you also misunderstood our definition of immortality, because in our world, immortality is not the aging being slowed, as you said, but immortality is reversible, we said, but in the sense that you can choose simply to not be immortal anymore, because if it wasn't for that, simply no one would choose to be immortal, to undergo this kind of procedures. That's obvious, okay? And the last speaker of your team said that was talking about fictional works that intentionally make immortality look bad. You talked about books that talk about stories of people being immortal and having a miserable life, but we're talking about fiction, this dystopian fiction that is made on purpose to make immortality look bad. So overall, our arguments still stand, because simply immortality is and nothing more than a great addition to society, because of the fact that it can actually give people more meaning. It can actually give people more will to live. People are going to be more motivated while being immortal. They're going to start thinking more in the long term. Everybody's going to start thinking in the long term. So people will just have more meaning added to their life. I conclude my speech.
Thank you. The time of your speech was 8 minutes. Okay, so I thank the third speaker of the opposition team for their speech, and with that, the first part of the debate, the constructive phase, is closed. And so we directly move to the reply speeches, and so I give the floor to the opposition side for the reply speech. Here.
Okay, so again, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Let me just say that this has been a wonderful debate, but as is with every debate we've been on so far, there have been a few discrepancies. 3 things from my speech. Firstly, the pointing out of the main strategic mistakes that have been made in the proposition team's case. Secondly, a presentation of the main points of clash that have manifested during this debate. And thirdly, the 2 worlds that have manifested as well. Firstly, on the fact that proposition spent to the start of their debate arguing that immortality, quote unquote, goes against the definition of human life. Again, extremely assertive. This is a philosophical assertion rather than some kind of harm, and they fail to show why redefining human life necessarily worsens the human condition, only being argumentative on a few parts that can be easily kept out of this debate. Secondly, they take our world at the worst case, at a dystopian speculation that assumes that only the rich access immortality, that immortality dominates society forever, and that institutions fail to regulate it. We can assess how this requires multiple speculative assumptions stacked together, which makes their scenario unrealistic, even for the dystopic scenario we're trying to bring forwards. They're also ignoring reversibility because they mischaracterize our case by assuming that immortality is permanent, despite our clarification that immortality would be reversible, meaning individuals could still choose to end their lives. They've also misrepresented our arguments, exaggerating our claims into experiences being impossible without immortality, while we never argued, because our claim was that immortality expanded human potential, not that immortal life has no value and that could only be gained through immortality. Again, something that has been very apparent in this debate is the lack of comparative analysis. Even if some harms on their world do exist, such as the harm of overpopulation, they fail to prove that these harms outweigh the benefits of, first of all, eliminating deaths, eliminating disease, biological decline, reallocation of economic power, and in general, this proves to you why the opposition team has won this debate. We've manifested 2 worlds in this debate. Firstly, a world where humans are free from biological limits, allowing them to live longer, accumulate knowledge, and pursue meaningful lives with greater freedom, while their world is a speculative dystopia where the immortality is monopolized by elites, meaning disappears, and institutions completely fail. We can identify a few points of clash within these worlds. Firstly, on meaning and human purpose, because while we say that meanings come from experience, relationships, and achievements, their side states that life loses meanings because death gives urgency, and immortality allows goals to be postponed. Like immortality allows goals to be postponed indefinitely. Urgency does not equal meaning. People already create goals, deadlines, ambitions, independence of death. Furthermore, immortality expands the range of meaningful pursuits, enabling long-term projects that are impossible within a single lifetime. Secondly, on distribution of power and wealth. Our side states that technologies which initially benefits the wealthy historically have been proven to also benefit the lower classes and become widely accessible through regulation, market competition, and political pressure. While their side says that immortality will simply be monopolized by the rich, allowing them to dominate society forever without mechanizing any further. We win this clash because their argument assumes institutions completely fail, or immortality remains permanently restricted. And this is unrealistic because governments regulate life-saving technologies and would face enormous pressure to distribute this access more widely. Thirdly, on societal consequences, we state that it improves the human condition by eliminating aging, disease, so on and so forth, while their side simply says that it shapes society in the worst possible way. Their claims rely on speculative dystopian scenarios rather than demonstrated mechanisms, which should prove to you who actually genuinely won this debate. In their world, they claim that immortality undermines the definition of human life, but their arguments only rely on philosophical speculation. Their dystopia requires unrealistic assumptions. They ignore institutional responses and technological diffusion, and they mischaracterize our case to bring their argument forward. The outcomes in their world is that humanity remains constrained by death and disease, and knowledge is constantly lost when individuals die. While in our world, human potential expands when death no longer arbitrarily goes and end development, because people gain greater freedom to shape their lives because time is no longer a constraint. It's better because it removes the largest sources of human suffering while expanding opportunities for progress, knowledge, and personal fulfillment. At the end of this debate, we want the jury to vote a world where humanity is no longer limited by some kind of biological fragility, and we can fully explore the potential of human life, which is exactly why we're proud to oppose this motion. Thank you all.
Thank you. The time of the speech was 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Great. So I thank the I thank the opposition team for their speech, and I leave the floor to the proposition team for the final speech. Here.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Okay, so my reply speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so right, we have so many problems. Why not just create new ones without resolving the old ones? I would like to start by thanking everybody for this debate. It was really intense. But I would like to start by underlining the strategic mistakes that the opposition did. I found 3 main mistakes. The first is the fact that they talk about medicine innovation a lot. But literally, when they gave the definition about immortality, they said that immortal people don't experience diseases. So their case and their point about innovation, about medicine innovation, completely false. Then, second, the fact that it wasn't really that easy to grasp their word. Like, would everybody be immortal? With just a part of the population being immortal? Even if they weren't clear, proposition wins this debate, because even if in their both cases, proposition points still stand. And then the third, the fact that they said that in our world, the rich have the power and they're like tied with corruption. So immortality wouldn't create this issue, but they didn't engage with the fact that it will make it worse. So that was just a whole contradiction. I would like to analyze the 2 main clashes of this debate. The main clash that was spent a lot of time talking about it was the fact that do immortal being help society through scientific innovation, or will they be selfish? Proposition said that immortal being will be an elite class. Proposition proved that living forever will make you selfish, leading to the rich holding all the power. Opposition said that there will be scientific progress and innovation, and people will follow their passion. Pro wins this clash since there were no contradiction. The main point is the fact that opposition brought an unrealistic world. They said that people will follow their passion, but not everybody has the economic possibility to do so. That was underlined by the third speaker a lot. If normal people will be immortal, they have to work forever. If a person is struggling to work when they are 80, imagine how they would struggle to work even if they are 500,000 years old, because people will still struggle. Proposition word, even if opposition stated many times that it was an unrealistic word, is realistic, since only the rich people could grasp an immortal life, since they have the economic possibility to follow their passion and live forever without having to work. And then, even if it actually works their world, so people follow their passion and they will not live like a life full of work, but like, who will stay in the lab and work to achieve this scientific innovation? Like, they completely didn't explain how that could work. The only solution would be that they would exploit normal people. And then the second clash that wasn't really talked about, that as proposition we thought that it was the main important case, is the fact that does immortality help human emotion or numbs them? Proposition deeply explain how it numbs emotion and how it makes people selfish. On the other hand, opposition, they just stated that it will make people have deeper relationship. They won't be selfish and they will work through progress. So proposition wins this clash since they actually proved how it happens without just stating that it will just happen. So proposition wins because there were no contradiction, the word worked, and we deeply explained how that could work. And that's the end of my reply. Thank you.
Thank you. The time of your speech was 4 minutes. Okay, so I thank also the proposition team for their final speech. And with that, the debate is over. So I kindly ask you to open your microphone and make a big round of applause for this great debate. Okay, so as usual, the judge will leave the room and they will actually decide this debate. So see you later.